there's always this notion that there is a right or wrong political system. That there's always something right or wrong related to the time and what people want. And frankly, I think it's also high time for us in Europe, in what is so often called the Western world, to rethink our political system. To say, okay, what would actually work best, the way we want to be governed. Because a lot of the principles we have are still from a time when many things which are there now, a certain amount of transparency, information, technology, where you could know lots of things. A lot of the systems are from a time when this was not possible. There was a few people who could know what is going on. So they were representing the whole country, representative parliamentary democracy. I think it is in general high time to think about what would be, in a digitalized technological world where anybody, any given time can know anything, the system which would maximize liberty, happiness, wealth, and rights of the individuals and an ability to govern. I think we need recalibration here. Very, very clearly. We need to rethink very profoundly what is needed. For example, we take Europe. I see a lot of sense in strengthening Europe, or the European Union, European Commission. But then we have to be honest and say the next layer below it cannot be nations, but this would then have to be regions. And then you have a Europe of regions, and where you have, Catalonia, you have Andalusia, you have Bavaria, you have, the Alsace-Lothringen. And by the way, COVID has shown this a bit.
The basically endless battles between the states. And
local and regional was where things really moved and happened.
Mm-hmm.
And national was looking a little bit around, saying, okay, what do we do now? And look, it's so logical. Because when it really comes to making things valid and approachable and experienceable for people, of course it's local and regional. So I really question the value and future of nation states. I'm not sure whether this is the layer we need in future.
I don't know about that one. Because, okay, I'm really glad the European Union exists. I think it's a great force for the world and for Europe itself. And it's given me the opportunity to be here right now, with the existence of it and its policies. But it also has a lot of problems. It's mind-numbingly bureaucratic. It's got political agendas that I'm not questioning whether they're right or wrong. They're just political agendas that may not necessarily be representative of Europeans. And Europeans seem to be going more towards sort of nationalism. Here in Spain with Vox, you have Viktor Orban, we have Andrzej Duda, we have a lot of people that are not necessarily pro-European and not necessarily... Did you actually see a world where we won't have... Sorry, okay, I'll rephrase again. Do you see a world where we can actually get rid of nation states in Europe? Or, yeah, let's focus on Europe. And do you, if not, then what will happen to European Union? Because they seem to have an existential crisis.
Look, I could imagine this, that nation states get more and more back. I'm afraid that nation states themselves don't want it, but it would be time. Because over time, it will not work that you have European Union, European Commission, and nation states and regions, this will not work. Because the whole sense of European Union will only be more and more once it really has a role which is not fulfilled by others. Right now, it's a little bit of a double whammy. You know, a lot is decided by countries, then they come to European level, then they try to get some compromise, but the real value of having such a supranational coordination is problematic as long as the next layer is one where it's always about proportion, who's from where, which commissioner do we appoint, who hasn't yet gotten a seat, which country, which region. I believe a regional context would be much more powerful. I'm with you. I think the European or Europe and European Union is a phenomenal invention. And I'm not so skeptical as you. I do not believe they're in an existential crisis. I think whether we like the policies or not, I was more critical to it, honestly. They managed the very severe, and let's not forget, this was just a few years ago, crisis of potential default of states within Europe, of Greece, and also some other countries were close to it. There is a lot of potential, but there are some fundamental questions. How much do we want a European foreign policy? How much do we want a European trade policy? I really believe that once COVID is being handled, a lot of fundamental questions will be discussed, also as a result of Brexit, which would have been discussed now if there wouldn't have been COVID. Because Brexit was a good lesson for many who were perhaps somewhere in their heart thinking, we might also leave the EU. I think many have understood that it's not a really good idea. And so it's basically, ironically, Brexit is a PR campaign for the EU. And we are just at the beginning of this campaign. We will see much worse.
I'm glad that the European Union really gave Britain a hard time. I would say that the vaccination process is very bad PR for the EU, but hopefully we'll get over it. One more thing I see with the EU, with the problem is that politicians who get to, let's say, the European Commission first basically have to pass the ladder of, okay, run for mayor, then run for parliament in your own country, and then by the time you get to being part of the European Parliament, you're probably in your 60s or 50s, and you've been in the establishment so long that you have zero ideas of your own. It's just what the party says or what your peers say. And that's a global problem. That's not just necessarily it's more exaggerated in the EU, but how do we deal with that?
I fully agree to you. And I mean, if I look at, I had most of my upbringing in Germany. If I look at the politicians who were running for the EU Parliament, most of them didn't make it in regional or national parliament. So that was the kind of, okay, we somehow need to give you some seats, so why don't you run for the European Parliament? So it's been always second best. And also this is one of the reasons why I say this has to stop. There should be one parliament, let it be the European one. Don't have all these national parliaments. Or at least, if you keep them, the more you have this conversion within Europe, which is basically happening with one currency, with the indirect rescue packages of Greece and other countries, you basically have also a kind of one fiscal union now.
So it was
but
originally intended to be a monetary union, not a fiscal union. Originally, it was a...
Exactly.
Okay.
And also with the Corona package, basically indirectly you are there. I would welcome something like, okay, if for example, if you keep the nation state, then let's look whatever percentage of votes for who becomes the German government should not only be voted by Germans, but also by others in Europe. And the same for Spain, the same for France. I think because you mandate a government to do something, and all what they do is basic, and there was a big discussion, is the European Central Bank violating its mandate? I believe we should at least start saying, okay, the moment there is elections of a parliament in a country, let it be 30% of the votes, everybody can vote who is in Europe. Because if you really mean to strengthen Europe, there is so many things which then Europe should be deciding. Let's talk about the foreign and security policy. It would be good if the mandate is stronger than just in your own country. So this problem that you have one parliament Europe, and then have this absurd thing, the German opposition parties, they sued the German government for agreeing to the European Central Bank to issue these bonds by which Greece was then rescued. And the German Constitutional Court then had to decide, this was a European decision, was this right according to the German Constitution or not? I mean, that's absurd. That's absurd. Why? Because, okay, if it's not right according to German Constitution, well, hang on, we are part of Europe. In Europe, it was done, it was considered okay. If now every member state has to pass their local constitutional courts, what is Europe? You imagine now in let's say in Austria, somebody would sue the Austrian government and say, look, you completely not fulfilled your task of protecting citizens by not ordering any vaccination. It was completely done by EU. And it goes up to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court says, yes, you're right, you deserve some compensation. What will the Austrian government say? One of the issues is that the mandate for European Union and Commission has never been clear. And still today it is not clear. It is always given, but it's not taken. So when there's a decision, okay, we decide on vaccination European-wide, well, why actually? Why? I mean, in the German government, it's known. The German health minister already was very far in agreement with AstraZeneca, with BioNTech, with Moderna, and then was called back by the chancellor saying, look, this is not nice. As a large country in Europe, we shouldn't do it in this way. Let this be done on a European level so that they order big amounts and then distribute to everyone. That it's not the biggest economy gets vaccination first. You understand?
I understand it,
But if they would have want to do it, if they would have done it, they would have done it. So Germany would have had vaccination, other countries wouldn't have. That's what I mean. There's no clarity. This is what we do on this level. This is what we do on this level. This is what we do on this level. The mandate is not clear. And my fear is the mandate will not be clear as long as you don't at least reduce the role of national governments.
How do we reduce the role of national governments? Anarchy, basically.
No, you give more authority to Europe. You basically say, okay, On certain areas. Look, there are areas where Europe should not be involved. The principle of subsidiarity. Foreign security policy, I guess Europe should play a role, but a real role, not what is happening now.
Right now, it's just basically playing no sides, taking no sides.
Absolutely. So there is still, every country has its minister for defense and this minister. You can't have both. And then this guy is called the High Commissioner for Foreign Policy in the EU, Borrell, Spanish guy, right now. What this guy supposed to do? First call like 8 or 25 defense ministers and say, look, I'm flying there, what shall I say? I'm a bit simplifying, but what's this mandate about? At least start saying, okay, on national government levels, we will not have ministers for this and this portfolio. This will all be coordinated in Europe. Let's start with something small. But the roles are not clear. And that's why Europe looks so bad, because national governments don't want to look bad. They will always make sure that they are, keeping their voters happy. And that is a bit a vicious circle. And this has to be broken up. How do you break this up? Well, people have to voice it, like I'm voicing it now. And probably you need a real strong leader in the EU or EU Commission. I mean, that was the hope for some of the leaders in Europe. They wanted to convince Angela Merkel to run for this role. And somebody with this authority then to talk to the heads of states and say, look, guys, we need to clean up.
Would a situation like this need to be put to vote throughout Europe?
Of course, yes.
So
it would need to be put to vote, and it would also need to be basically pass all the constitutional courts. So yes, but Roham, I don't see a way out to get out of the symbolism. Europe so far is symbolism.
Absolutely, it's nothing more.
And it could be so powerful. So that is, and that's also why I mentioned before that, national elections, there should always be a part where other countries also take part to make more and more also, convergence. Get interested in other countries' politics. If I would be a Greek or an Irish citizen, I would really feel, what do we have to say actually in Europe? The Germans and the French, they run everything. They're the two main nations. When Macron and Merkel agree something, this would be my feeling if I would live there. Okay, let's say, look, you can also participate, and your votes will only be 10%, 15% of all votes for German parliament, but you can participate there. This would be revolutionary. And Germans, you can participate in all other countries. All your other countries' votes, you can participate in the Irish elections. You can vote. All the other countries' vote will only count, 10%, 20%. You can increase it over time, but start with something modest. But make people understand we are in one boat. Europe only works if we understand that we are in one boat. And now it is like there is 28 or more, I think, member states, 28 boats, and then there's one boat called Europe, and people walk sometimes over and come back.
No, it doesn't work.
And that's, in my opinion, the main issue. There's no clearly defined mandate for Europe where there's no way back, where there's no backup. But you say, this is your authority. This is what you do in Europe. And we take it seriously. We really send best politicians there. It is really important who are ministers, who are commissioners. We go out of these proportional stuff. It has to be always one this, one that, one that. But this has to be triggered by such changes.